Hey, Roy, welcome to Shippa, and today we're going to be going from JavaScript to Kubernetes in about 5 minutes. So let's take a look. So the first thing you need actually is an application. Here I have a Node.js application, which actually I cloned from the Node.js project themselves, actually showing you how to Dockerize a Node.js application. Pretty straightforward. We have a server.js that returns hello Kubernetes that's bound in a particular port. To actually create a Docker image, first you need to have some sort of Docker runtime or Docker engine on your local machine. Next, you need actually a Docker file, and this is actually a very basic Docker file here. So basically, this is running npm install, exposing it on port 2121, and also this is just an entry command here running server.js. When you're ready to start actually executing a Docker build, just go ahead and clone this file to your machine. Let's just make sure I'm in the right folder here. Perfect. Let's go ahead and just run a particular Docker build. I'm going to actually increment my tag 0.01 from the example. This is going ahead and going to get built. And since I built this before, actually, in another example, it actually executes pretty quickly. Next thing is we actually need to push this to a particular registry. Here I'm using actually public Docker Hub. I actually created a repository called sample.js. So we can actually come back and look at the repository and we can actually get those particular push commands. So since we tagged out 1.0.1, let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's go ahead and push that to my repository. This might take a few moments. Actually, that was pretty quick since it was already cached on my machine. If we come back to public Docker Hub, we'll actually see that this image tag actually got pulled. So the next step is, now that we have our image, we actually need a Kubernetes cluster. There's multiple ways to get a Kubernetes cluster, but I find that for this example, running something on Civo Cloud is really straightforward. Here, I sign up for a Civo account, and if you sign up, you get plenty of credits, so this could be free. You can actually come and create a new cluster, but I have one running called my JS cluster. You can take a look at it. And once you spin up a cluster, it actually takes only a few moments with Civo. You'll get an external IP, your API endpoint, and a DNS address for this. Now, the next step is, since you have this image, you need to go ahead and deploy it into Kubernetes. Next, coming over to Shippa. Now it's time to create all the particular Shippa abstractions that you need to create to deploy. There's only a few pieces you need. You need to make a particular framework, bind it to a cluster, and then deploy an application. So actually, let's come back to a framework. Here I have all my examples that are actually completed, but let's make a new one. The easiest way to do this is actually make a reasonable default framework. So go ahead and click next. Let's just call this example.js. Since we already have a particular cluster we combine to, we combine that here, but we'll actually hold off for that. Go ahead and select a plan, which by default you should have Shippa plan and Shippa cloud. And that's it. You're now able to bind this to a cluster. Now here we have actually a particular cluster that's running. If we had to create a particular new cluster, we can come in here and say this is maybe Civo cluster 2. And we click next. There are a few pieces of information that you need to connect to a particular Kubernetes cluster. It's the Kubernetes API endpoint, a token based off the service role, and also the certificate of the cluster. The instructions are in the blog post how to get these or create these if you don't have them readily accessible to you. Now that we have a particular cluster running here, we can actually deploy it through our particular framework. So we can go ahead and just add our framework to this. Click next, and update. Now we have our two particular frameworks here that we need. Now, for the example, if you're following along the blog, you only have one framework. Let's go ahead and make another application. Let's just call this maybe JS for you. Since we already have the complete example, we're going to be deploying through our example.js and we're actually saying that only the Shippa team has access to its application. We're going to go ahead and click create. Now we're ready to deploy our application. If you click JS for you, we can actually come and deploy a sample application. If you come here and deploy, we can just take a look at the particular Docker image or registry information that we need. Coming back to public Docker Hub, we see we have an image called 1.0.1. So we can just come back to Shippa and increment that and go ahead and click deploy. And this will take a few moments to deploy the application. As the application is being deployed, we can start seeing that the application map is being populated. If we come back to applications and JS for you and click on this public endpoint, it should actually bring us to our application. So let's check that out now. And just like that, we see hello Kubernetes. And there you go, going from JavaScript to Kubernetes in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, cheers, Ravi.